common? The answer lies in a principle as counterintuitive as it is lethal. True power does not shout, it whispers. It does not impose presence, it hides. And it is precisely in this invisibility that invincibility resides. Sun Tzu, the legendary Chinese strategist, wrote over 2 millennia ago that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. But what does this mean in practice? It means that the safest path to victory is not to demonstrate strength, but to conceal it, to appear weak, hesitant, harmless, while, behind the scenes, preparing a devastating attack. This concept, explored in the classic The Art of War, is one of the most misunderstood ideas in strategic thinking, because it requires not only tactical intelligence, but an almost inhuman mastery over one's own ego. In the modern world, where everyone competes to appear stronger, more competent, more self-assured, those who know how to seem harmless become invisible, and therefore unattainable. While fools flaunt themselves, the wise gather information. While the insecure shout to be heard, the powerful listen in silence. The battlefield can be a boardroom, a family dinner, or an emotional conflict. And in all these scenarios, those who strategically appear weak often win before the first confrontation. This video explores in depth how the appearance of weakness has become one of the most effective weapons in the psychological arsenal. From the perspective of neuroscience, Eastern philosophy, and behavioral psychology, we will understand why underestimation is an advantage. Because when someone believes you are weak, they lower their guard, and in that moment, reveal everything. Fears, plans, vulnerabilities. This is not a video about submission. It is about control, about turning others' perceptions into a carefully crafted trap. By the end of this journey, you will not only understand the power of disguise, but learn to use it in your personal, professional, and emotional life. Because the reality is simple and brutal, no one protects themselves from an attack they did not see coming. And that is exactly why the truly dangerous are those who do not seem to be. Most people believe that power must be visible to be effective. That strength needs to be demonstrated, imposed, even feared. But this view is childish, primitive, a result of an animalistic instinct that still dominates human behavior. Sun Tzu, over 2,000 years ago, understood a much more sophisticated truth. Power that reveals itself too soon is doomed to be neutralized. True power is what is not seen. It operates in the shadows, disguises itself as weakness, and turns its very invisibility into a weapon. The principle of strategic invisibility proposed by Sun Tzu is not just a trick of war. It is a mental model, a way to navigate the world with complete advantage, even when it seems you are at a disadvantage. It starts from the premise that every human being, upon identifying a threat, activates defense mechanisms. The mind closes, the body tenses, attention sharpens. But in the face of the harmless, or what seems to be, these barriers crumble. The other disarms without realizing it, and it is exactly here that the danger lies. Imagine being on a battlefield where your enemies do not know you are a combatant. While they expose themselves, shout orders, compete for space and dominance, you walk freely. You observe, you listen, you gather precious information. And when the right moment comes, you strike with precision, not through brute force, but through superiority of time, space, and intelligence. This is true invincibility. Not the kind that withstands attack, but the kind that is never attacked because it was never perceived as a real threat. In modern language, strategic invisibility can be applied in various contexts. In the workplace, you do not openly compete with egotists. You let them entangle themselves while you quietly build your position. In relationships, You do not reveal your deepest emotions to those who do not yet deserve them. You observe, test, read the other while remaining neutral. In negotiations, you present yourself as someone flexible, open, even insecure, and thus lead the other to a false sense of control. When you finally reveal your position, they have already given everything: expectations, limits, weaknesses. Sun Tzu said, "When near, make it seem you are far. When far, seem to be near." It is the game of illusion. And in this game, the other's ego is your main weapon. The desire the other has to dominate, to win, to be superior. All of this can be manipulated when you present yourself as someone defeated. Because the easiest victory is the one where the enemy does not realize they are at war. And the most effective trap is the one where the victim thinks they are in control. This principle requires self-control. It demands that you renounce the immediate desire to prove something, to show yourself, to seek validation. It requires emotional intelligence to contain the impulse to react. But in return, you acquire a type of power that cannot be fought against, because it cannot be located. A power that acts from within the adversary, corroding their perception, confusing their instincts, exploiting every gap they themselves open, thinking you are weak. But this strategy does not work without a deep understanding of the human mind. It is necessary to comprehend what leads someone to underestimate another. What mental mechanisms cause a human being to let their guard down in the face of what seems fragile, and why, precisely because it seems harmless, you can control the entire dynamic of an interaction without ever raising your voice. In the next part, we will dive into these hidden mechanisms. We will reveal how the psychology of underestimation can be used as a powerful weapon. Because when others believe you are not a threat, they become vulnerable. And it is at this moment that the game truly begins. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. The human mind is deeply vulnerable to illusions. We are conditioned from childhood to associate strength with presence, power with a loud voice, authority with dominant behavior. This association is so automatic that we rarely question it. And that is exactly why underestimation becomes one of the most effective tools of strategic manipulation. When someone believes you are weak, limited, or irrelevant, they not only let their guard down, they reveal their essence. It is at this moment that the game changes. Underestimating is a misreading, but the mistake does not happen by chance. It is induced, created, constructed, and this requires a cold, patient, and deeply calculating intelligence. When someone presents themselves as fragile, shy, hesitant, the other projects all their assumptions onto them. They pose no risk. They are not a threat. I can relax. But what is actually happening is the opposite. The seemingly weak person is absorbing information, mapping behaviors, testing limits. And all of this occurs because the other, in their unconscious arrogance, believed they were in control. Underestimation reveals people's blind spots. Those who believe they dominate the situation stop protecting themselves. They start to talk too much, to share too much, to show too much. And in this involuntary exposure, they also reveal their fears, insecurities, and hidden intentions. Because the human brain, when it perceives no threat, enters cognitive economy mode, it relaxes the filters, and in this state of carelessness, it becomes highly manipulable. This happens at all levels of social life. In corporate environments, the discreet employee who never interrupts, who listens more than speaks, is seen as passive. While the egotists promote themselves, he accumulates silent intelligence. And when the right moment comes, a restructuring, a promotion, a crisis, he acts with precision, catching everyone by surprise. Not because he was weak, but because everyone believed he was. In relationships, the same mechanism repeats itself. The person who appears too vulnerable, who seems naive, who does not engage in direct confrontation, often induces the other to feel superior. And the feeling of superiority is, ironically, the beginning of vulnerability. Because when we believe we are smarter than someone, we let go of caution. Arrogance creates blind trust, and blind trust is the anteroom of failure. This is the fertile ground for sophisticated psychological manipulation. The invisible manipulator does not confront, he induces. He plants ideas in the other through apparent weakness. He uses silence as a tactic, hesitation as distraction, the calculated mistake as a trap. And all of this works because the human ego is hungry for validation, and nothing massages the ego more than being in front of someone inferior. That is exactly why so many masters of strategy and historical diplomacy used weakness as a facade, not out of fear, but by choice. They understood that control is not in imposing, it is in inducing. The true manipulator does not push, he pulls, does not command, he suggests, and above all, does not reveal himself until it is too late for the other to react. But this art of being underestimated is not simple. It requires mastery over oneself. It requires stifling one's own ego, resisting the urge to prove worth, and transforming every gesture into a tool for reading the other. It requires understanding that every human interaction is a dance of perception, and those who master this perception master the game. Now that we understand the hidden power of underestimation and how it directly affects the behavior of others, it is time to take a step further. How exactly do we apply these ideas in daily life? How do we turn these strategies into concrete actions that grant us an advantage without exposure? The answer lies in the tools of silent emotional manipulation, and that is what we will discuss next. Get ready to learn about the most subtle and most lethal weapons in the psychological arsenal. Knowing that underestimation is a powerful weapon is just the beginning. True mastery lies in applying this principle with skill in a practical, everyday, and absolutely imperceptible manner. This application requires a psychological refinement that few master. The art of appearing vulnerable while not being so, of demonstrating passivity while controlling, of yielding ground to later conquer the entire territory. It is here that manipulation transforms into conscious strategy, and the apparent weak reveals themselves as the architect of the surrounding environment. The first fundamental technique is emotional disguise. The modern world is a minefield of emotional triggers. When someone attacks, they expect a reaction. When someone humiliates you, they want to see your anger. When someone belittles you, they seek to extract your weakness. Most people react exactly as the aggressor expects, with fury, resentment, or protest. But the true strategist acts differently. They turn every aggression into an opportunity. They remain silent where others explode. They smile when others expect their downfall. And that smile is disconcerting, because it does not signify submission. It signifies dominance. Imagine your boss humiliates you in public. Your immediate reaction would be to retaliate, defend yourself, or remain silent with hatred. But the trained mind sees beyond. This act was an exposure, a loss of control, a revelation of insecurity. By responding coldly, with a simple, "I understand your position," you not only disarm the attack, but force the other to confront their own exaggeration. By not reacting as expected, you become enigmatic, and nothing is more frightening for those who need to control others than being unable to predict their responses. The second tool is the use of soft language. Words are weapons, but the most lethal are not sharp. They are subtle. Words like maybe, could be, I'm not sure if I'm right. You might be right. Create an illusion of vulnerability. They make the other lower their guard, believing they are dealing with someone fragile, indecisive, even submissive. But behind this softness lies intention. By not confronting, you give space for the other to reveal themselves. They talk more. They justify themselves more. And in no time, they expose their own fears, insecurities, contradictions. Softness in this context is not surrender. It is a trap. Next, we have the low-profile strategy. In a world where everyone wants to be seen, those who observe become kings. Staying out of the spotlight, not out of fear, but by tactical choice, offers an advantage that few recognize. The peripheral gaze sees what the central gaze ignores. The discreet strategist walks behind the scenes, listens to conversations not meant for them, witnesses conflicts they do not participate in, and uses each piece of information as future currency. When they act, everyone is caught by surprise, because no one expected anything from someone who never wanted to draw attention. Finally, the most refined of tactics, false vulnerability. This is the art of revealing carefully chosen weaknesses, asking naive questions, purposely making mistakes in irrelevant details, pretending not to understand an obvious logic. All of this has a purpose: to induce the other to arrogance. When someone believes you are less capable, less attentive, less dangerous, they relax, show off, and surrender. It is at this moment that control changes hands. Pretending ignorance, when done with intention, transforms every conversation into a minefield where only you know the location of the bombs. These strategies are not ready-made formulas. They are mental disciplines. They require restraint, patience, and mastery over one's own ego. They demand that you sacrifice the need for momentary approval in exchange for an invisible yet absolute influence. Because while everyone screams for attention, you build power in silence. But what good is it to master these weapons without knowing where to use them? True power lies not only in technique, but in surgical application in specific environments. At work, in relationships, in family dynamics, in negotiations. Each territory has its own psychological configuration, and it is there that strategy transforms into real victory. This is exactly what we will explore in the next part. How to apply these principles in the most sensitive and dangerous fields of modern life, and win every battle without even being noticed. If what you're hearing resonates with you, you'll find real value in my ebooks. Beyond the Shadow breaks down Jung's core ideas, while Dialogues with the Unconscious gives you a 30-day path to apply them in your life. Both are linked in the pinned comment. Mastering theory is only half the equation. True mastery lies in quietly applying these principles in the most hostile terrains of everyday life, environments where power is diffuse, disguised as hierarchy, affection, or convenience. Here, the art of appearing weak becomes a weapon of survival, ascension, and freedom. Every word you choose, every gesture you refrain from making, every battle you decide not to fight, all of this silently builds a field of influence that others don't even perceive exists. Let's start with the corporate territory, where the power game is played daily with masks of professionalism and plastic smiles. In an environment where flattery and arrogance are often confused with competence, appearing discreet is an underestimated strategic advantage. When dealing with toxic colleagues, for example, the classic mistake is direct confrontation, the visceral reaction, the outburst. But the true strategist documents, observes, collects patterns, maintains a cordial tone while internally building a dossier. And when the moment arrives, an internal complaint, a restructuring, an opportunity to expose the abusive pattern, the attack is precise, lethal, and impossible to defend. Because while others were busy competing for recognition, you operated in the shadows. With abusive bosses, the strategy becomes even more delicate. Here, appearing obedient is your smokescreen. The high-ranking manipulator thrives when they believe they completely control their subordinates, but the apparent submission hides a silent preparation. Updated resumes, activated networks, exit plans organized quietly. You leave the battlefield the moment they believe they have won. And it is at that instant that they lose everything: control, morale, and often their very position. In interpersonal relationships, the field is even more subtle and more dangerous. With a dramatic X, for example, the tendency is to respond in kind: irony, disdain, attempts to prove emotional superiority. But this only feeds the cycle. True control lies in neutral cordiality. You become bland, indifferent, not out of weakness, but out of intelligence. The other, upon receiving no reaction, collapses emotionally and dismantles themselves. Your absence of reaction becomes the most effective torture. With manipulative family members, the war is silent and long. The secret lies in superficial agreement, saying yes, smiling, nodding, while internally you have already decided. Your life follows a plan they do not know. They think they still have control over you, but all they have is an illusion sustained by your ability to maintain the theater. And the more they believe they influence you, the further they are from the truth. And what about toxic friendships? Those relationships where the other expects you to always be available, always yield, always fulfill the role they projected onto you. Here, gradual distancing is the most efficient weapon. There are no confrontations, no declarations. There is only a growing silence, a calculated absence. You stop responding so quickly. You stop justifying yourself. And over time, you disappear from their routine. And when they realize it, it will be too late to rebuild the bridge. In personal life, strategic invisibility manifests in mastering reactivity. Criticism, accept it with a smile. Then, evaluate internally. Not because the other's opinion matters more than yours, but because you understand that reacting is losing. Conflicts? Yield in irrelevant battles to win important wars. True power lies in choosing which war to fight. And negotiations? Start small. Make the other believe they have the advantage. Show yourself flexible, even insecure. And in the end, lead everything to where you had already planned from the beginning. In all these contexts, the essence of invincibility lies in the ability to control not only the environment, but yourself. To appear weak so the world ignores you, and at the exact moment, be strong enough to defeat it with a single move. But one question remains. Why is this strategy so effective? Why does nature seem to favor the discreet, the patient, the silent? The answer lies far beyond human psychology. It is in the cycles of nature, in the predatory behaviors of animals, in the laws of silent survival. And that is what we will explore in the next part. The ancestral power of invisibility, how nature shaped this tactic, and what the world's greatest predators have in common with the most dangerous strategists in society. Nature does not reward the loud. In the jungle, the lion does not roar before attacking. The eagle does not scream while diving toward its prey. The snake does not hiss before sinking its fangs. The deadliest predators do not announce their presence. They become part of the landscape, wait for the exact moment, and act with absolute precision. This is not just a survival strategy, it is a universal law. Real power, at all levels of existence, is silent, invisible, and absolutely relentless. Modern humans, in their eagerness to assert themselves, have broken this principle. In search of validation, exposure, and visible superiority, they have forgotten that the more visible power is, the more vulnerable it becomes. Everything that is seen can be attacked, contested, sabotaged. But what operates in the shadows acts from within, infiltrates instead of colliding, that cannot be destroyed, because no one knows where it is. This is the essence of the final attack. The blow that no one expects. The action that arrives without warning after weeks, months, or years of apparent passivity. It is when the silent manipulator reveals their true form, not because they seek revenge, but because the time has come to act. The moment when everything is aligned, the other's weaknesses exposed, defenses deactivated, the scene controlled. And what seems like a sudden move was actually planned from the first silence, from the first false yes, from the first smile that hid a blade. Nature teaches that the predator does not waste energy unnecessarily. It does not attack when it is angry. It attacks when it is sure. And this is what differentiates the impulsive from the strategic. The impulsive reacts to provocation. The strategic transforms provocation into a map. The impulsive enters the war to prove themselves. The strategic has already won when the other believed they were winning. And the most frightening part, the strategic does not seem dangerous. They seem distracted, fragile, naive, until the ground disappears beneath the enemy's feet. And it is too late. This type of power requires a level of discipline that few achieve. It requires suppressing the need for immediate justice, silencing the desire to show that one is right, resisting the temptation to win small battles when one can win the entire war with a single move. It requires acting not on impulse, but on vision, because he who knows how to wait masters time, and he who masters time masters everything. But do not be mistaken, this path is not for the weak. Being invisible is being lonely. No one applauds the silent strategist. No one recognizes their genius until the result is already sealed. You will not be celebrated. You will be feared. And that is the true prize of silent power, the absolute freedom to act without opposition, because the world does not react to what it does not understand. And now, after this entire journey through mental strategies, subtle manipulations, emotional disguises, and ancestral tactics, there remains only one final truth to be said. The strategy of appearing weak to become invincible is not just a technique, it is a philosophy, an invisible code of conduct that governs the most successful, the most feared, the untouchable. But what about you? Are you ready to adopt this code? Are you prepared to abandon the desire for recognition and embrace invisible power? Before you answer, there is one last message, a closing that stitches together everything that has been said. Because the true final blow is not delivered with hands, it is delivered with the mind. And that is what you will discover now, at the conclusion of this journey. The great movements of history have never been preceded by loud announcements. Empires have fallen without warning. Silent leaders have taken power without raising flags. Ordinary people have transformed their lives when they stopped trying to win with force and started to operate with intelligence. The truth, as uncomfortable as it is liberating, is this: the world belongs to those who know how to hide their true strength until it is inevitable. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to react to every provocation. You don't need to explain yourself to be respected. In reality, the less you expose yourself, the more you control. The less you are perceived, the more space you have to act. When others think you are weak, you gain the time, silence, and space needed to architect a complete victory, one that doesn't need to be celebrated because it is definitive. Those who shout, who show their teeth, who impose presence, are always being challenged, always on alert, always on the edge. But who seems fragile? That one is not attacked. It is ignored. And it is in this ignorance that the greatest of all powers is born. The power to surprise, to control without being noticed, to transform the invisible into absolute dominion. Modern life, with its social, emotional, and professional disputes, is a battlefield disguised as normality. Those who do not understand this, live reacting, justifying themselves, exhausting themselves. Those who understand live observing, waiting, deciding. And at the right moment, they act. Without noise, without fanfare, but with total impact. The tiger does not roar before the attack. The eagle does not sing before the dive. And you, if you want to dominate your own reality, must also learn not to announce your movements. Real power does not need to be declared. It only needs to be felt when there is no longer any way to escape it. If this message made sense to you, write in the comments. No one sees what does not provoke fear. That way I will know you understood the code. And more importantly, that you are ready to start applying it. I want to read your vision, your experience, your invisible battle. Because this channel is not just about content, it is about silent transformation. And if you've made it this far, don't stop now. The next video continues this journey. And yes, it is important, perhaps more than you imagine. Click, watch, absorb. Because those who master the invisible master everything. And this journey is just beginning.